They say the worst betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who sleep beside you, who memorize your breathing, share your grocery list, borrow your jacket when the wind shifts, and promise 1,000 small forevers over burnt coffee at 6 a.m. My wife Laura was that person for a decade. Then a single receipt cracked our marriage, like thin ice in early spring, and I learned how quietly a person can drown. It was a Tuesday morning, May 3rd, 6:47 a.m., when I noticed the slip of thermal paper poking from her purse. 2 cappuccinos, 1 almond croissant. A cafe downtown called Willow and Stone. Sunday, 9:18 a.m. Laura had told me she was driving 3 hours north to visit her sister that weekend. She left before dawn, returned after dark, and spoke about quality sister time while we folded laundry. The cafe, however, sat 12 blocks from our house. I tucked the receipt back and reminded myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she stopped for coffee before the drive. Maybe the cashier misprinted the timestamp. I wanted those maybes to be true. I kissed her goodbye, fixed servers at the office, and convinced myself it was nothing. But by Thursday, a second receipt surfaced. Same cafe, 2 matcha lattes this time, Wednesday afternoon. Laura worked downtown. I did not. Question answered. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathing. 10 years of marriage mapped in the quiet space between us. I wondered how long she'd been meeting someone else. I wondered if she rehearsed her lies, or if they fell from her lips as easily as "Good night, Ethan." I promised myself one thing before sleep finally dragged me under. I would not scream, would not sob, would not beg. If she'd fractured the life we built, I'd decide how the pieces landed. I am an infrastructure engineer. Pattern recognition feeds me. Over the next 3 weeks, I collected data, bank statements, text logs, calendar invites. Laura's phone backed up to our shared cloud, sloppy, sweet serendipity. Every Tuesday and Sunday, she pinged the same location beacon near Willow and Stone. She texted a contact saved as M about croissants, playlists, migraines that required escape time. Photos appeared, wine glasses clinking, a skyline at dusk, her smile angled toward a camera I didn't hold. No selfies with the mystery man. But the negative space outlined him like chalk. I could have confronted her then, but anger without proof felt like smoke without flame. I wanted a bonfire. So I kept watching, kept screenshotting at 2 a.m. while she slept a foot away. People think surveillance is cold, mechanical. It isn't. It's intimate, almost tender, like tracing a lover's outline with invisible ink. I learned her secrets heartbeat by heartbeat, and each discovery lodged in my ribs. M turned out to be Marcus Hale, regional sales director for the wine distribution company where Laura managed events. I found his LinkedIn, his Instagram full of vineyard sunsets, and a smug headshot in the company newsletter. Married, 2 kids. The cliché hurt more than I expected. Our betrayal was just another tired story on his highlight reel. Divorce was the obvious move, but obvious rarely satisfies. Laura's betrayal wasn't a storm. It was erosion. Steady, silent, inevitable. I wanted my response to match. I wanted patience sharp enough to slice through bone. First, finances. We had a joint account and separate personal accounts. Our prenup, ironically drafted at Laura's insistence, stated infidelity voided the 50-50 split. Useful, but provable? Texts alone might not convince a judge. I needed something undeniable. Second, careers. My job was stable, but hers was her identity. She curated elegant tastings, charmed investors, name-dropped sommeliers over dinner. Take that away and she'd feel the hollow. Marcus, meanwhile, reported inflated numbers quarter after quarter, too clean to be true. If I could prove fraudulent expenses tied to their affair, they'd both bleed. Third, timing. The company hosted an annual summer gala at the Crestfall Vineyard, a luminous evening of string quartets and hand-rolled cigars. Laura coordinated it. Marcus headlined the keynote. Investors, board members, media, the perfect stage. The plan wrote itself. I spent June mining Marcus's digital footprint. A buddy in telecom owed me a favor and secured metadata from Marcus's burner phone, one he paid for with a corporate card labeled Client Outreach. Venmo statements showed reimbursements from Laura for flower delivery, garden supplies, and once, laughably, dog grooming. We didn't own a dog. I booked a therapy session I didn't need, told the therapist the truth. I'm strategizing. She asked if I wanted reconciliation. I said I wanted clarity. She prescribed mindfulness. I left thinking about billable hours and leverage. At night, I tagged photos. Marcus's hand on Laura's waist, wristwatch shining. I traced the timepiece back to a limited edition Frédéric Constant he'd expensed as client appreciation. Photos posted after midnight from a boutique hotel. The same dates Marcus supposedly hosted distributor dinners 2 counties away. Each dot connected hummed with potential energy. I built a dossier, 57 pages, indexed, cross-referenced, notarized by a friend who never asked why. I printed 3 copies and locked them in separate safe deposit boxes. Paranoia is simply preparation in the right light. A week before the gala, Laura became distant. She took calls in the garage, hid her laptop behind coat closets. She was sowing lies faster than I could count, and I let her. We ate dinner beside each other like polite strangers. Sometimes she glanced at me with something like guilt, but mostly she smiled through it, practice for her next performance. I stayed kind, kissed her forehead, watered her gardenias, pretended not to see the shadow on her face when her phone buzzed. Kindness can feel like love or poison, depending on the dosage. I administered it carefully. June 26th blazed hot enough to melt wax. Crestfall Vineyard shimmered with lanterns and money. I arrived in a charcoal suit, bow tie tight, dossier tucked inside an unremarkable black folio. Laura wore emerald satin, hair pinned with pearls Marcus probably paid for. She didn't expect me. My RSVP was unavailable. She looked surprised, maybe even pleased, when I greeted her with a glass of Bordeaux. Marcus hovered near the stage, rehearsing charm. "Didn't think you could make it," she said, voice lilting like nothing was wrong. "Last-minute change," I replied. "Wouldn't miss your big night." She kissed my cheek. I smelled his cologne on her skin. The string quartet began. Guests drifted toward the courtyard where a projector glowed. Marcus took the podium, launched into a speech about integrity, growth, family. Each word tasted like rust. Halfway through, I stepped behind the AV console. It took 10 keystrokes to swap his slideshow for mine. Photos of receipts, screenshots of late-night rendezvous, expense reports for luxury hotels during client dinners, a selfie of Marcus and Laura toasting champagne in bathrobes. Gasps rippled like wind through wheat. Marcus froze, words evaporating. Laura's face drained to bone white. I slid the folio onto the CEO's table, one of my notarized copies, and whispered, "Due diligence." Security escorted Marcus off stage. Laura followed, heels clacking like funeral drums. I did not pursue. I watched investors murmur, board members confer, reporters raise phones. The empire they built on stolen afternoons collapsed before my eyes, and I felt nothing but cool, precise satisfaction. The company launched an internal audit within 48 hours. Marcus was terminated for fraud, pending legal action. Laura was suspended, then quietly dismissed for policy violations. Word spread fast in the tight vineyard community. No one hired her afterward. At home, she packed methodically, cheeks hollow, eyes rimmed red. She tried apologies, first teary, then angry, then numb. I listened, offered tea, and reminded her of the prenup, infidelity clause. She left with clothes, jewelry I bought her, and a single suitcase of memories. I did not waive my rights. Divorce finalized in October. Clean, quiet, uncontestable. The house, mine. The car, mine. Savings, untouched except for legal fees she owed. I sold the place 3 months later and bought a loft overlooking the river. Minimalist. No garden boxes. People love closure stories, but closure is a myth. What exists is aftermath, a landscape forever altered. I kept working, kept breathing, but each routine task felt sharper, as if betrayal sharpened all my senses. I learned Spanish, ran a half marathon, adopted a dog named Bite. I dated, carefully, honestly. I told one woman the entire story over coffee. She called me methodical. Not a compliment, not an insult, just true. I thought revenge would taste sweet. It didn't. It tasted like salt water, harsh, cleansing, necessary. I don't regret the dossier, or the slideshow, or the silence I wielded like a scalpel, but I no longer mistake precision for healing. Healing came later, slowly, like grass reclaiming a scorched field. Sometimes I pass Willow and Stone. I order a cappuccino and sit where the first receipt was printed. I don't feel pain, just distance, as though the man who scanned screenshots at 2 a.m. is someone I used to know. They say betrayal comes from those beside you. I disagree now. Betrayal grows inside you, fed by every uncertainty you ignore, every truth you silence to keep the peace. Laura planted hers in plain sight, and I watered it with denial, until it strangled us both. But gardens can be replanted. Soil remembers every root, every fall, and I've learned to sow stronger things: honesty, patience, the quiet understanding that trust is not a seed you bury once, it's one you tend every day, or else it dies.